Hello everyone, and welcome to today's session of Cyber Pulse, which is a webinar organized by the Canadian Institute for Cybersecurity, where we invite bright minds and guests and leaders from the world of cybersecurity, and have them share their experience, their wisdom, with us here on the webinar. Now, with this, we move on to the topic of today, what the fish. Uh, as you all would already know that, phishing is one of the oldest ways, people have been scammed. It's very old, it's very effective. And to talk about this topic, we are thrilled to have with us today Michael Joyce. He will be leading the talk today. Uh, Michael is a researcher, he's a practitioner, and the host of the cyber criminology, podcast. With years of experience at the intersection of cybersecurity, psychology, and policy. Uh, Michael and I know each other from, quite some time. So, with this, I'll cut short the introduction and he'll introduce himself in just a moment. So without any further ado, Michael, we welcome you to today's webinar, and it's time for you to take over.
Thank you so much for that, Sumit. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. It's always great to work with the Canadian Institute for Cybersecurity. They have been staunch proponents of pushing science for the advancement of cybersecurity in Canada for many, many years, and it's always a pleasure to work with such an esteemed group. Myself, my name is Michael Joyce, and I'm currently the executive director of the Human-Centric Cybersecurity Partnership, which is a social science-led research group. It's a federal group. We have close to 50 researchers across Canada and the world looking at cybersecurity issues from a humanities and social sciences perspective. Still technical as well, as they must be, but looking at a range of topics from the impact of cybersecurity on democracy, all of the way down to making more usable security for interfaces for people. I'm also the host of Cybercrimeology, which is a podcast about cybercrime and the research of cybercrime. It's a little bit niche, but if you're interested in finding out more about the people researching cybercrime and the research that they're doing, that's a good place to go. And I'm also one of the organizers of the Cybersecurity Revolution conference, a conference that runs once a year, that runs for 24 hours nonstop. It's a live stream, a continuous live stream that brings together nations and researchers from across the world to share their research. In my spare time, I'm doing a PhD at the Université de Montréal at the Crime Prevention Lab. That's what some of this presentation will be on. And the presentation has been very, very much made possible and supported by Beauceron Security, who hopefully you're aware of there in New Brunswick. They've been very kind in helping me to realize the kind of research that should be done, I feel, into phishing. So before we get too far into it, we're going to use some terms, and it's always good if we understand exactly what I mean by these terms. And the reason that I'm going to take a little bit of time to define what I'm talking about is that, as we know, some of these terms get used in marketing contexts and in the news, and sometimes exactly what they mean seems to stretch or change depending on the context. So when I'm talking about phishing, I'm talking about a particular type of mass email. So it's a form of social engineering. It would be the kind of email that is sent out to a large number of people, not to one person in specific. So I'm not talking about things that are targeted, like spear phishing. For me, that spear phishing is not exactly phishing. So it's within the spam context, and it's the kind of email that is trying to get someone to provide information or interact with that email directly. So just for the purposes of this conversation, that's what I mean when I'm talking about phishing. So it's separated out a little bit from some of the other forms of scams and social engineering that might come via computer mediated communications. I'll also be talking about awareness. Awareness is a very interesting word. It's a very interesting term in that it's an old word. Like it's a really, really old word. The sound word comes from what they call Proto-Indo-European language, a language that predates all of the languages on the entire continent. That is Europe, the larger space. That whir sound is common amongst all of those languages, so we know that it's an older sound. And it's a word that's used to make people aware of something. So say you're out walking in a field and there's a hole, somebody might yell out, where or aware or beware to advise you of a particular danger that you're about to experience. It also forms parts of warden, uh, guard, steward, vanguard, wardrobe. That's all of this from the same sort of concept of something that takes care of something. It's also when you get noticed for doing something good. So be someone noting that they are aware of the good thing that you've done by giving you an award or a reward. And it's also something that should be taken care of, such as wares or software or hardware. And a ward is a child that must be taken care of. So even within English, this concept of aware, that basically sort of gets spread around to different kind of places. And that might be why there are different ways that it's used in the context of cybersecurity. So when we're talking about awareness, we should take care to understand exactly what we're talking about when we're talking about being aware. So for me, it's going to be more in the context of being knowledgeable about something that you should take care of, and not so much as a basic unit of information that other information will be built upon, because it's used in both of those ways when it comes to cybersecurity. So that's the definitions part out of the way. I would like to sort of suggest that due to specialization, and if you're from a technical background, I'm talking to you. If you work in cybersecurity and have done for quite a while, I'm very much talking to you. If you are the kind of person that is from that sort of science, technology, engineering background, this is something that I think you should keep in mind, in that society's forced us to be specialized. We very much have to focus on certain types of knowledge and information. But because of that, it changes our impression about what other people know on topics. So if you're from that STEM and cybersecurity world, you will have a good idea about what cybersecurity is and what it means to you. But because of something called the Dunning-Kruger effect, you might have an opinion about people who are more specialized in other types of fields, how much they know about your field and cybersecurity. So the Dunning-Kruger effect sort of suggests that at one end, people who are less competent in an area may overrate their competency. But also for people who are highly competent, they might accurately represent their own abilities in a field, but they might believe that other people have more competency than they actually have. So what tends to happen is you think that the people who are less specialized in your area have a greater understanding of your area than they actually do. And you, so that sort of puts you in a place where it's very hard for you to understand people who are outside of cybersecurity or technology, understand their point of view or their perspective when it comes to things like cybersecurity. So if you ever find yourself in a conversation where you're wondering, why is it do people do this? I can't understand why people would keep clicking on these things. They obviously they don't think it's important, or they're doing it on purpose, or they just keep clicking. It's often because their competencies aren't quite where you expect them to be, because this is your world. This engineering and security is your world. And for them, it's not. So you're probably overrating their ability, and they might be overrating their ability as well. So they might know less than they actually think they do as well. It makes it very hard for cybersecurity people to understand what's going on for non-cybersecurity people. Another temptation we might have as a group is to rely on technology as a solution for problems. Coming up with a technology that solves a social problem is very tempting for us because it means we don't have to change any of our behaviors or cultures or anything like that. It's a lot easier. If we can come up with a faster way to cook food, then we don't need to spend more time cooking or do things like that. The microwave sort of is a technology that changed how people cooked. So we're always looking to do that for cybersecurity as well. We want to come up with a technology that's going to solve a lot of our problems. But I think that some problems can't be solved with technology. So you may have heard of this knife technology. It's been around for a while. In fact, it's about 3.6 million years old. It predates Homo sapiens. It's been with bipeds since before we are who we are now. So we have a lot of experience. We've had a lot of time to develop technologies for the knife. But as it is, still there are over 1,000 people per day who are injured by knife-related injuries. So this is a technology that we've had for a long time, but we've still not managed to come up with a way of making it safe. So you might be thinking that because it's the United States, maybe there are more knife-related incidents in that country than there are in other places. But, you know, these are people who actually went to the hospital and could afford to go to the hospital for their knife injury. So we would expect that it might be a little bit more representative for that reason. So I put it to you that computer-mediated communications might just be one of those technologies that we cannot completely make safe with technology. So what do we do then? Well, in other realms, in health and safety for other technologies, say at building sites, places like that, they've come up with a way of sort of integrating different types of solutions. So you have a way of sort of harmonizing between human solutions and technology solutions. So you might just not use a thing if it's too dangerous to use. So you could eliminate it. That's kind of a human solution. We've just decided that that tool is too dangerous for us to use. You could substitute it with a safer technology. That's a technology solution. You could put in guardrails or safety features to make it harder to hurt yourself with an existing technology. It's another technology solution. We can put in place administrative controls, which is training and education on the safe way to use the technology. That's a human solution again. And we can create personal protective equipment, which is sort of pushing the responsibility to the individual, but those are also generally technologies as well, things to help them to not hurt themselves. So we can think of examples of that in terms of, I said building sites before, so construction tools, but I'm sure you can also think of examples of each of those when it comes to cybersecurity as well. The other thing to keep in mind is, particularly in an organizational context, computers support human endeavors. If there were no humans, the computers wouldn't have anything to do. I often like to ask people what happens on the day after Judgment Day in the movie Terminator when the robots have taken over the world. I'm not sure what they do on day 2. In our world, at least, all of these systems are designed to support us. So at least from the point of view of an organization, computers are designed to support the human endeavors, and cybersecurity is designed to, the activities of cybersecurity make sure that those computers keep working. So we have to just be aware of where we sort of fit in that pyramid. We have to put the human first in all of this, because if the computer system contravenes the way that the organization or the humans are trying to operate, it's not going to stay around very long. It's going to be contrary to the strategic objectives, or it's just not going to be used. People will find a way around it. So what are the things that humans do? How can we understand the way that humans work in order that we can design solutions and use cybersecurity tools in a way that works with them. So I've sort of got 5 concepts drawn from psychology and decision-making sciences and a few other places that sort of give an explanation as to the operations of human. The first one is that humans think efficiently. We've evolved over thousands of years to only use calories when we really need to use those calories. And the brain does use quite a few calories when we're thinking about things. So it makes no sense for us to burn calories thinking about things that we don't need to think about. So if we are able to survive without thinking about particular things, then we may not think about those things. We are being efficient by doing this. So rather than thinking that people are not thinking about them because they're lazy or any other kind of reason, you have to understand that we are evolutionary better off as a result of this ability to only think about the things that are important to us in our survival. So we think efficiently. We also make do. Humans don't do an optimization function when they're looking for solutions to problems. If we were to do an optimization function, then going to a supermarket to try and find lunch would result in us comparing all of the possible combinations of ingredients that exist within a supermarket. And I dare say we might die of hunger before we come up with the optimum result of the quest to have lunch. So we do what is called satisficing. We come up with an option that satisfies our requirement, and then we just stop there. We come up with a viable option that works within the resource requirements that we have of it, the timeliness, the amount of energy we want to put into making that decision. So rather than optimize, we satisfice, we make do. We have a dual system of thinking. And this is kind of complex in reality, but it's a good tool to think about this. If you've read Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow, you'll know what I'm talking about. We have one system that is fast, efficient, and automatic. And then we have a second system that is considered, controlled, conscious, which sometimes gets referred to as system 2, which is what we generally think about when we're thinking of thinking. But there's another step that's always happening all of the time. It's habits. It's what you're paying attention to. It's the things that you notice. So you have this interaction of 2 different systems that are happening when you're making decisions. Next, we learn imperfectly. We don't get to choose what we learn or how long we retain things. It's shaped by the experiences that we have while we're learning it and the uses that we have for it. So it's not an exact process learning. You can't tell yourself what to remember. You have to design learning experiences such that those things stay with you. It's not a perfect process, and we don't have control over it. And finally, we have bodies. Our brain is contained within a living organism that interacts with the environment that it's in. It gets tired, it gets intoxicated, it gets stressed. The physical conditions of our body have an impact on the decision making that we do. So we can't divorce our decision making from our embodied context. This is why us and AI will always sort of have a fundamentally different understanding about things as we move through our existences. I won't get into the AI thing too far. I'm sure more of you have a better idea about that than I do. Okay, so now we have an idea of how people are and how they think. We have an idea of where their place is within society and the organization. We have an understanding that we probably need to be looking for solutions that aren't purely technical. So let's look at some data. Let's look at some analysis of things. This is a study that's been done in the Canadian context. It's a very large study. I think it reveals some interesting things, but we're going to look at awareness, we're going to look at training, and we're going to look at timing as 3 different sort of elements surrounding cybersecurity. And we're going to look at them in the context of phishing and behaviors relating to phishing, not opinions, behaviors, things people do. So the first thing that we're going to look at is Cybersecurity Awareness Month and why we do that, whether it does anything in particular. So Cybersecurity Awareness Month, 1 month a year, every October in Canada and a lot of other nations as well. There's a month that people's attention is directed to cybersecurity issues to try and increase the buzz and the talk and the amount of conversation and learning that happens around cybersecurity awareness each year. And this makes it a very good natural experiment for us because it happens at a specific point and we can look at what happens before and after and at different times throughout the year, when it's happening, when it's not happening. So that's what we've done. So does Cybersecurity Awareness Month make a change for organizations? Well, we can say that it does. So for organizations across Canada, there is a 13% increase in the number of phishing email simulations sent, and the number of phishing email simulations sent in 2024 increased by 23% in Cybersecurity Awareness Month versus other months. So we can see that organizations in Canada do engage with the Cybersecurity Month. They change their behaviors. They increase the amount of phishing email simulations that they send during this time. So this suggests that it has an impact on the operations of these businesses in Canada during that time. So we can say, yes, it does something. It changes the behavior of organizations in Canada. It also has an impact on the phishing click rate. So this is the number of phishing emails that get clicked on, that people click on the link or the thing that we would hope that they don't do, the interaction that we prefer they not have with a phishing simulation email. We can see that in 2023 and 2024, the phishing click rate during the awareness month is lower than the other months of the year. So it drops during that time that the additional conversation is happening around phishing emails and cybersecurity. So these are two very good things. We can also see the reports of real phishing, so not simulated phishing, the reports of real phishing increase in this period. This isn't a rate, so we have to understand this isn't the percentage of phishing emails that people receive, because we can't know how many phishing email people receive because these are in real companies. So these are the phishing emails that manage to make it through without being filtered or detected by any kind of software. So we have no way of knowing exactly how many phishing emails surpassed our technological solutions, but we do know that there is a greater number of reports in October versus other times of the year. And logic dictates that the people sending phishing emails aren't holding back on their phishing capacity for 11 months of the year, only to send more phishing emails in the month of October. That wouldn't make much business sense for them. It would make much more sense that they're sending the maximum capacity that they have for phishing the entire year around. Although there may be fluctuations in that, it probably wouldn't be just in October, and it wouldn't be reliably more in October. So we can say that this says something about the activities of people who are responding to phishing reports. Interestingly, the phishing simulation reporting, so these are the people reporting phishing simulation, it drops. So this is something that we would hope that people are doing, but they do less of it during the month of October, during Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So phishing, actual phishing, they report more of. Phishing simulations, they report less of. So they click less, they report actual phishing more, but they report phishing simulations less during Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So what does this tell us about Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and give us some suggestion as to what cybersecurity awareness does? So firstly, we can say that it is effective. Cybersecurity awareness does do something. It is not ineffective. There is a clear change in the month of October versus other months. It does do something. It has an effect. The other thing that we can suggest is that it creates what we might suggest as heightened awareness rather than a building block of awareness. So we didn't observe that people's awareness goes up, their behavior changes, and then it stays at that rate. It goes up during Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and then it drops off after a point in time. So it might be the type of awareness that we're doing is raising people's awareness of cybersecurity issues, and then after a time, it drops back down to a normal level. It makes perfect sense that we cannot stay at a heightened state of awareness all of the time. Otherwise, that would just be our new state of awareness. So logically, it doesn't make sense. But we also know from our own practice, it's very hard to pay attention to all of the dangerous things all of the time. Other things take our attention, other different types of concerns, and the actual work that we're supposed to be doing. The other thing is reporting interacted differently with awareness than other things. And what I might suggest is because of the amount of awareness that people are receiving during the month of Cybersecurity Awareness Month, they might start to become fatigued. And that might change their willingness to do the benevolent act of sharing back with their organization to let them know that that was a phishing simulation email. So they might be making choices to be less community-minded, or just to put less effort in when it comes to cybersecurity. They do the minimum to make sure that they are not affected by the phishing email. That is, they delete the phishing email or they ignore the phishing email, which is a safe strategy. If you don't click on it, everything else is more or less safe, but they don't go to the extra effort of reporting on it, doing that extra click. So there might be a difference in what reporting emails mean to us than what clicking on emails mean. They aren't just necessarily at opposite ends of a good versus bad behavior spectrum. They might represent slightly different things. So when should we do cybersecurity awareness? So we've looked at cybersecurity awareness does do something, but when should we do it? So we're going to look at the decay in awareness. If we're able to heighten awareness by providing training or education, or Cybersecurity Awareness Month, as in the example, how long does it take for that to decay? So let's look at awareness decay. And when we look at this, we're only going to look at the people who clicked or reported a phishing email. Most people take the lowest effort option, which is what people are natural to do. We are efficient. They take the most efficient option, which is to not interact with the email at all, to not do anything extra, to not click, but also to not report. So we're only looking at a small segment of the people who have these kinds of interactions with the email. So when we get to the next slide and we start talking about figures, we're talking about a smaller group of a smaller group of a smaller group here. So this is not necessarily a representation of all people across the board. This is a representation of the people who will have one of these kinds of interactions with a phishing simulation email. So the likelihood of reporting a phishing simulation sort of decays over time. We can see that at 0 days, the likelihood of reporting, if you are going to report, the likelihood of reporting 0 days after receiving your training is 98.4%. That is the probability that you will report an email, a phishing simulation email. If that is what you're going to do, the likelihood that you'll do it at 0 days is 98.4. And the progression of time here is roughly a month, but we can see that after time, it starts to drop. So it drops to 97% after 30 days, down to 94% after 60 days. After 3 months, we're down at 90%, but then it drops off quite rapidly after that. So we can see that there's sort of a time effect having an impact on the likelihood that people will report a phishing email based on the time between receiving the email and the time that they did training. So there seems to be a delay that happens for training. We have heightened awareness for a while, and then things change over time. Likewise, but in an opposite direction, with clicking on a phishing link, we can see that at 0 days, there's a 3.5% that people who are in the clicking group will click on that phishing email. And that's kind of interesting to note that the idea that we will get rid of clicking on phishing 100% is something that we should probably consider as unlikely to ever happen. I mean, this 3.5% could represent the people who spilt a coffee at the time that they were looking at the email and their hand slipped and they clicked. Like this is a very small number, but the probability that it's going to happen is still there. And we can see that after 30 days, it increases. 60 days, it increases to about 9.3%. After 90 days, we're at about 14%, and then it increases for there. So this isn't out of everyone. This is for the people who are going to click, but we can see that there is that change over time. And this sort of has an impact on how we think about the regularity that we do our phishing training. So if you're looking at doing phishing training once a year, we can see that over on the right, we're up at about 95%. So if that's okay for you in terms of your risk appetite, then that's probably okay. So when we talk about how often you should train, the answer is generally it depends, but now we know on what it depends. It depends on your risk appetite. How much are you willing to risk that people might click on phishing? We know there's an upper limit as well. There was that 3.5%. So 100% is probably never going to happen. We should just accept that there will always be an accident that could happen. And that's going to have an impact on how we design our other systems and the fact that we're going to have to put in some kind of resilience measures. The other thing I'd caution you to is the idea of fatigue. So we learned from the other study on awareness that there could be an impact of overdoing things. So we can't just train everybody every day to keep them at that 3.5%. There might be some other interactions that happen. So there's likely to be an equilibrium point that depends on your risk appetite. Finally, when does cybersecurity awareness important for us? And I'm going to be talking specifically, when is it important for us in terms of time of day and day of week? So as we mentioned before, we have bodies, we are embodied thinkers, and the impact of the day and of the week and the time of the day has an impact on those bodies. And because of social interaction, social conventions, the day of a week has an impact on us as well. We know we sleep at certain times, we know we're awake at certain times. So how do those times interact with us with regards to phishing? So first we should look at when companies send their phishing simulation emails, just to sort of get an idea of the kind of base rate that we're looking at. So these are phishing simulation emails sent by day for companies in Canada, and we can see that it's pretty consistent across the week. There's a little bit less on Saturday and Sunday, but not too much. We never get below, as a general rule, 20,000, I think it is, for the people who can read the maths. And the scientific notation on the side, I think, is about 20,000 sent on each day of the week across Canada. So we can see the thing to take away here, it's pretty even across the days of the week. So we're pretty even in how we send our phishing emails across the week. How does that interact with when people actually click on things? Well, there's a clear hotspot here. So this is the week running from Sunday to Saturday with times of the day with midnight at the bottom and 11 p.m. at the top. And we can see that on Monday morning at about 8 a.m., there is a peak time for people to click on phishing emails. I have to say here that this is not a rate, so we can't speak to susceptibility. We can't do any kind of likelihood calculation here. We can't say that people are more likely to click on a phishing email simulation that they receive at this time, but we do see that there are more clicks on phishing emails at this particular point in time. The reason I say that is because I'd invite you to the expression is engage safety squints. Be suspicious of anybody who talks about a susceptibility rate for particular times of the day, because I at least cannot work out how you would be able to determine that in the way that we're able to gather data without doing a laboratory experiment. So It's not that they're giving you the wrong information, but maybe the way that they're talking about it is slightly misrepresentative if they're using susceptibility where they mean a total amount. So we can see that something happens on Monday morning. If you're looking at 2 a.m. on a Sunday, I don't know what happens there either. If you can explain it to me, I'm happy to hear from you. But we can see that Monday morning, something is happening there. There's a clear hotspot. This is for reporting. And again, we're looking at 2024 for Canadian businesses. Again, a very clear hotspot happening at about 8 a.m. on the Monday morning. So Monday morning between an 8 and 9 a.m. is the time that people both click on phishing and report phishing the most throughout the week. Is it just Mondays, though? Is this something about Mondays, the actual day, Monday? So we tested that by looking at regular Mondays versus public holiday Mondays. And we can see that it is not something about the word Monday or the day Monday, because on holiday Mondays, there is a drop of 81% in reporting, and there is a drop of 39% in clicking. It's interesting that those two numbers are not the same amount of drop, suggesting that there is, again, a difference in how people click and report as behaviors, that they're not necessarily different ends of the same stick, that they are different in terms of how people make those decisions. But we can see that it's probably not Mondays so much as it is the start of the work week that we might be looking at as the thing that has an impact. So how would we find out more information about that? So what I did was to treat phishing emails using the same sort of statistical analysis that is often used for life expectancy under certain conditions. So this is survival analysis that's been done here. We're looking at click survival. So how long does it take for a phishing simulation email to perish by means of being clicked on by someone? So we can see that generally they are clicked on within about 200 hours. So if an email, a phishing simulation email is going to be clicked on, it will be clicked on within that time period. But the other thing that we can see is, and we've divided them up based on the day that the phishing simulation email was sent, we can see that the phishing emails that are sent on a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday have different curves, so they have different rates than the emails that are sent on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And if you look at the timing here, and I've put the intervals there at about 24-hour periods, you can see that they have a particular gradient and then change after a certain amount of time. And this seems to somewhat line up with slightly longer for Friday, slightly less for Saturday, and then less again for Sunday. This gives us the idea that this clicking is not happening over the weekend period and then happening a little bit later on. So if we look at reports, it's a little bit different, but similar. One thing to note here, phishing emails, if they're going to be reported on, they can be reported on much, much later. So they seem to last a lot longer than the ones that are clicked on. But we can also see that there is this time and a point at which that gradient changes, suggesting again that there are less interactions for a period that sort of lines up with 24-hour periods, and then there's a change. So this suggests to us that there are social conventions or there are routines that people have that have an impact on when it is during the week that they're going to click on phishing. So it may well be that there are people who close their email box on a Friday and do not look at it again until a Monday morning. And because of that, all of the emails that they receive during that time period will be sitting there waiting for them to go through on a Monday morning, including the phishing. So this is what we might call routine concentrated risk. There are routines that people have that concentrate their risk within a particular time period. What does this mean for us? Well, perhaps we can try and interact with that time in order to change how our organization experiences risk. Now, I have to say again, this isn't susceptibility, so they aren't necessarily more likely to click on a phishing email at that time. But from your organization's perspective, it is more likely that there will be more clicks at that time. Whether you change anything is up to your organization. Perhaps it's a good thing for you that if people are going to click on phishing emails, they click on it at 8 a.m. on a Monday morning, because then your security team has the rest of the week to deal with all of those problems. Maybe you're happy with this being that way. That's a choice that you can make. Or perhaps you want to sort of spread it out so you don't get quite as many hits on your SOC at the same time. So you might want to slow down the rate of emails going into those inboxes over the period of that first day. Or you might want to make a policy within your organization that nobody sets meetings at 9 a.m. so that people have more time to deal with their email, so that they can be less stressed, and that each of the decisions are made over a longer period of time, and that puts less stress on other aspects of your business. So this has been a very, very sort of compact and very fast run through of some human aspects of cybersecurity and how they relate to phishing in particular. But I hope the things that you have picked up during the presentation have been that there are different types of awareness. That knowledge awareness, we can consider that as being aware of something, so now knowing about something that we didn't know before. But there's also other ways to think about awareness, and one of those in particular is heightened awareness. So we can be paying more care and attention. We can be better able to recognize things for a period of time based on somebody making a call for us to be aware or making us aware. But that has a time limitation to it. So we have a vigilance aspect of awareness, a thing that we refer to as heightened awareness. So when we're doing awareness activities, we might be doing heightened awareness rather than doing knowledge awareness. So once you know, you don't necessarily know forever. We learn imperfectly, but there is still a benefit to that raising of awareness for a particular period of time. The second thing that I hope you can take away from this is that the depends when it comes for how often to training is on your risk appetite. So we can tune training for your risk appetite. If you're happy having it run up to the maximum likelihood, then maybe once a year is fine for you for training, but there may be a different rate that you're happy with in terms of training effectiveness in keeping people at different rates of probability of either clicking or reporting. So you might need to tune how often you do your training based on that appetite that you have. The final thing is that the routines that we have, that the practices that we have as a society and as an organization can have an impact on how risks are experienced by our organization. So the routines that we have can focus risks at different times of the week and times of the day for our organization. And that's something that we can be aware of and make choices about, be they technology or policy choices. So I hope you've taken at least those three things away, and I hope that I've given you enough input that you are now full of questions, and that we have the opportunity to have a conversation about these concepts and some of these preliminary results from the research that I've been doing. With that, I'd like to remind you that the Human-Centric Cybersecurity Partnership exists, that I have that podcast, which is about cybercrime and cybercrime research, that the SecRev conference is there. If you want to reach out to me, please do. I'm available on LinkedIn. You can send me an email. And again, I'd just like to raise that all of the findings that we have here are made possible by an organization, Beauceron Security, having a science positive attitude and really working to make sure that I have data, but that they're committed to the approach of improving cybersecurity through science and empiricism. So I'd like to thank Beauceron for helping out very much in making all of this research happen. And with that, that's the end of the presentation portion. And I hope now to be able to effectively answer your questions. So thank you.
Thank you, Michael, for this insightful session. It certainly gave us a lot of perspective about the topic of phishing, which is so simple and yet so complex and effective. With this, we'll move on to the Q&A section. and let us just see what questions we have from our viewers. So, the first question that we have is Michael on the demographic. Do you observe any significant difference across the demographics like age, the sector, the job type, in how people interacted with the phishing simulations?
Um, so there's two things to unpack here. With regards to the sector and the industry, yeah, there is some variance depending on what it is, which particular study that we did. Some not so much. So the time between phishing, not so much variance between organizations, but with the interaction with Cybersecurity Awareness Month, yes, there was a fair amount of variation between different industries on that, because it may well be that some more industries that are more mature in their approaches were doing a lot of cybersecurity awareness anyway. So the impact of Cybersecurity Awareness Month might not be as big, but for smaller companies, it may have had a bigger change. And that's probably the thing to look at demographically there. If you cut them up in terms of the size of the organization, smaller organizations have more of an impact. So once you get sort of below 400 employees, then it starts to have a bigger impact than it does with the larger organizations. But that's likely due to them having a security team, having people on site that are doing that throughout the rest of the year. So it's not to say that they are lesser, it's just that the variance is less. The other was with the normal sort of things that you expect to see in terms of demographics, which is age and sex. And I did not include them in this study. So I did not include them for a couple of reasons. One, the level of analysis is at the institution level, and institutions don't have a gender. They might have an age, but they don't really, that's not something that we normally consider when it comes to scientific studies like this. And the other is that across all of the other studies that have done this kind of analysis for cybersecurity awareness, when you eliminate all of the other externalities, neither gender nor age really has an impact. They are just proxies for other things. So age is a proxy for the level of contact or the experience with technology, gender, the level of opportunity, for interactions with technology. So there's no real need, at least from my perspective, to include them in a study like this. So I didn't, and I don't believe that they would have any impact.
Okay. Michael, you spoke a bit about awareness fatigue. So how organization can avoid overwhelming their employees while still keeping them, alert?
Well, there's been there's a groundswell in research on that, but I'd have to say we don't have all of the answers. But the frequency with which you're interacting with your user group would have an impact on that. You can overdo it. You can do too much. So that's definitely one thing. Making the kinds of requests that you're asking of them very effortful in terms of what's required of them. If you make them go and read a textbook on cybersecurity before they're allowed to tick off that they've done their cybersecurity awareness, you might induce more fatigue. Making it so that they can see the applicability of the work that you're asking them to do, the learning you're asking them to do to their particular role can help with them engaging with the content in a way that's a lot less fatiguing. And also, I would say your security culture and the interaction that you have, the sort of relationship that you have between your security team and your users might have an impact on that. So if you're antagonistic with your user group, if you're trying to catch them and reveal that they're doing bad things, that might make it seem like a different kind of work than just learning things.
Hmm. Thanks for that, Michael. And with this, I'll move to the next question. So much of your research is directly working with the industry. So do you think that the industry overestimates or underestimates how much awareness alone can achieve in stopping the phishing risk?
Well, I can only really go from what people tell me and the discussions that I see in public forums, places like LinkedIn. But it really comes down to how involved and engaged different members of the industry seem to be with the process of doing cybersecurity education.
Okay.
It it really changes. A lot of people who are more focused on the technology, where it's not really their thing, they're still looking for that technological solution. So they tend to be a little bit more dismissive of it, and they might attach their opinions to any sort of evidence that suggests that it's ineffective. People working in the field, though, can tell you that from their practice, it does have an impact. And the companies that do work on these things, there is a clear difference between organizations that have no cybersecurity awareness programs at all and the ones
Okay.
that have at least a basic one. So
Mm.
it really depends where you're at in industry. I mean, if you're talking in terms of a manner of degrees, there's a lot more research for us to do. We can work as an industry and academic community together to get
Mhm.
finer measurements of the impact of those things. There's still a lot of work to be done there. But in terms of does it do anything at all? We know it does something. What we're working towards is having the kind of understanding and the kinds of measurements that would enable us to say, if we turn this knob here, we'll get a little bit more result there. And if we wind this back here, this is the change that we would expect to see. So
Mm.
from industry, I sort of see a mix, but I think it's really from the perspective that people have based on where they're working in the industry and the kind of awareness they've had an interaction with.
Understood. Understood. Michael, we have throughout Canada, we have a lot of, small businesses. If I talk about the province of New Brunswick, upwards of two-third organization qualifies as, small and medium scale. So how can small organization with limited resources begin to apply, some of the human-centric cybersecurity, in principles today?
Yeah, and it's such a big part of the Canadian economy as well. These small
Yeah.
businesses are the ones that are making Canada work. Um, and look, I'm not going to try and sugarcoat it. This is a difficult thing to do. If you're a baker, you should be concerned about bread. You know, that's your thing. You shouldn't become an expert in cybersecurity. But you should be aware of the impact that it can have on your business, and you should be taking some steps to implement these things. Be aware that there will always be some role for you as a human to play in your cybersecurity, making good choices, making good decisions, the same as there are with not being scammed by dodgy suppliers or, giving into the needs of the needy client who's trying to, there are threats to every aspect of your business, and the cyber is no different. So you should put some effort into being somewhat aware of those different things.
Okay.
But also, there are many government resources that are there to help you. There are checklists put out by the Canadian government that you can work your way through. And there are resources online that you can leverage in order to get yourself up to at least a basic standard of awareness and take advantage of that Cybersecurity Awareness Month.
Mm. Understood. Michael, the next two questions are completely out of the scope of the research that you shared with us, but I'll anyhow read those to you. That phishing has always been very effective way of scamming people. How much of the effectiveness has increased with the advent of artificial intelligence?
Oh, I mean, it's an interesting question. Um, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Nobody knows as of yet. Maybe someone's working on a study at the moment. But the problem that I can see is that a lot of the advice we have been giving people in terms of how to identify phishing have been things along the lines of identify bad grammar, identify some aspect that might be the result of somebody trying to create phishing lures, phishing emails from a language other than their first language, um, or to look for specific cues, the Prince of Nigeria, for example. Because of those kinds of awareness, we might be looking for things that no longer exist in future versions of phishing because they will be able to come up with different types of authority figures, different types of variations on the theme of advanced fee fraud or the Nigerian prince scam or the Spanish prisoner scam, whatever you want to call that scam, depending on what age you're diving into the analysis, whatever you want to call that. there will be variations of it. The spelling errors, the grammar errors will likely disappear because that's what those AI tools are particularly good at. So we might be giving people advice that is unhelpful for them. And it may actually have a negative impact because they may see an email and say, well, there are no grammar or spelling mistakes in this, and this doesn't identify any of the things that I've been told to look for. So it's probably legitimate, right? Because it's spelt perfectly. And that could be a problem. So we will definitely have to adapt to the change in reality brought on by AI. But whether that makes people more susceptible is probably more down to how we're training them than the capabilities of people, because scams have existed before computers, and people have been able to detect scams before computers as well. So that's probably just something that we're going to have to adapt to. So there might be a change for a little while, and then we'll adapt, and then things will be back the way. At least I hope so.
Glad we had the webinar on the topic of phishing, and we were able to mention the Nigerian prince. I still remember in my early 20s that we used to get those spam emails from the Nigerian prince, and the spam email that we get today, that the language, the accuracy, the tone, everything has improved so much. A decade ago, you can just say by looking at an email that it is a phishing email, but these days the phishing email has gotten, I mean, so much accurate with respect to language, grammar, and tonology. So glad we sort of cover that. And with this, we come to the last question. If we can really quickly take it. Phishing is more of a human challenge, and we have technical ways to solve it. So would you say it's a human issue or a technical issue or a bit of both?
I'm not sure it's worth making the distinction. I have a feeling that trying to treat it as either will keep us away from the solutions that will be perfectly effective. If we come up with technical solutions that work for 99.999% of phishing emails, it means that a user receiving a phishing email will become such an unusual event that they will be unprepared, that they will not expect it because they never make it through, and it'll likely increase the likelihood of them clicking on it and everybody having a bad day. Likewise, if we only go with human solutions, then people are going to spend all day dealing with phishing emails and nobody's going to have time to get any work done. I would suggest that we should think of it as a dyad, as a combination between human and technology. And we really need to come up with a way of harmonizing those different technologies to come up with something that is more complete. So whether it being one or the other, it is both. But luckily, we have solutions that can be both as well. So I think that's probably a better way of trying to conceptualize where it sits. It is a problem of them both together, and solutions that work with both together will probably be the most effective for that reason.
Understood. Understood. With this, Michael, we come to the end of today's session. I certainly enjoyed it a lot. I mean, phishing is such an integral topic to the world of cybersecurity. It's one of the oldest ways of scamming people, and it's still so effective. So I'm glad we had that conversation, and I'm glad you shared your research with us. And with this, we come to the end of today's session. So everybody who joined us today, thank you so much. And for our future sessions, please follow our LinkedIn channel. The next announcement of the webinar will be made on our LinkedIn channel. Until we meet the next time, stay safe, stay secure, and we'll see you guys in the next webinar. Thank you.